Alright, my name's Sam Lewis. I did a presentation on Alan Moore. He's a British comic book writer. He wrote these books. This is Watchmen, and he also wrote Batman, Killing Joke, and V for Vendetta, which we watched that movie of. And I talked mostly about Watchmen in my paper because it's like the most expansive and it has like this whole history and it tackles a lot of real world problems. And that's what Alan Moore does. He like takes these like bright, campy comic book superhero worlds and he throws real world problems at them. And by doing that, he forces us to accept these darker realities of life and learn how to change them. So the first one I'm talking about is sexism. Sexism is close to Moore because it's like really rampant in the comic book industry. It's both like in the books and behind the scenes. And in fact, an early version of the DC editorial code says the inclusion of females in stories is specifically discouraged. Women, when used in plot structure, should be secondary in importance. And so he addresses this with two characters that both go by the name Silk Spectre. The second is the daughter of the first. And so as you can see in these two articles right there and right there, they refuse to like recognize the first Silk Spectre as like a legitimate contribution to the crime fighting movement, and they just look at her as a sex object. And then the second one here is talking about her old costume that was given to her that just had a dumb neckline and it wasn't like protective at all. And so in the real world, the first like big movement to get women more involved in comic books was by Stan Lee in the 70s. He tried to start a line of women's comics. This ultimately failed though because women have been pushed out of the comic book community so much at this point. He had a hard time finding enough women to hire. Nowadays though, it's a lot better. Like, yeah, these girls right here, but there's still big problems such as the movement Women in Refrigerators. They talk about how female characters are often depowered, raped, or cut up and stuck in a refrigerator for the development of a male character. That's a reference to this right here when Green Lantern came home to find his girlfriend was killed and stuck in his refrigerator. He also addresses toxic American culture through the character of the comedian. One reviewer described as Captain America, but an asshole, which I thought was really accurate. Throughout the book, a lot of characters address him as like this patriotic figure. This one guy said down here, he saw the true face of the 20th century and chose to become a reflection, a parody of it. Throughout the book, he's shown to be a rapist. He attempted to rape this girl who was thwarted on the next page. When he was in Vietnam for the Vietnam War, he shot and killed his pregnant girlfriend, and he has like no remorse. He doesn't even care. And these two things are representative of like, you know, all the attention to sexual assault and rape recently in culture, and domestic abuse and gun violence. But Moore kills off the comedian in like the first few pages of the book. Everything you've seen is like through flashbacks. And this is representative of Moore saying that this part of America can die, it's not important, and we should move on from it. Moore also talks a lot about the rights of LGBT people. For example, in V for Vendetta, which you guys all remember, the book isn't that different from the movie, especially the Lark Hill resettlement camp. The Norse Fire Party, it says, they started rounding up the gays. They burned Ruth with cigarettes and forced her to sign documents and led her to kill herself. The Moore thinks that the acceptance of personal identity is important to people, which is this quote, which is like too blurry for me to read, but it says that it's part of her that they'll never be able to take away. And another part V brings up, or that Moore brings up, is it's speculated that V is actually a trans woman, which means that she would have been born male but identified female, and this would explain why V was even at Lark Hill in the first place. And that would explain why he put Evie through that whole like Lark Hill simulation, like to show her that gender is a construct, because he took her from being like this really like feminine girl to looking like more androgynous. Moore really wants us to like let go of the past. So back to Watchmen, it has like this whole like vast history. The story happens in the 80s, but you hear a lot about this group back in the 30s and 40s called the Minutemen, which were kind of like the Avengers. And each of these characters, Moore had them represent something bad. So I already talked about how Sylvie Spectre, that girl represents sexism, comedian, is all the bad part of American culture. This girl over here, that's Silhouette, she is a lesbian, and she was outed by the media in the 40s, and then she was later killed for being lesbian. And before that, she was kicked off the Minutemen by two members who were closeted because they didn't want to also be exposed. There's also this guy, Dollar Bill. He represents capitalism and corporate greed, because while all these other guys actually wanted to like do some good in the world, he's just like sponsored by banks, and the banks designed his costume, and at the end that was his downfall because his cape got stuck in a revolving door and he was shot down. And he really tries to like nail down this like not letting go is like a negative aspect. Such as around the beginning of the book, this guy like assembles all the main characters and he tries to start this new comic book team because he can't let go of the past of the Minutemen, which dissolved, and this whole thing dissolves like immediately. And there's even a quote where the old Silk Spectre is talking to the new one, and she's saying, "What happened 40 years ago? It's history." And I should let go of it. So Moore really wants us to like change what we know, change what we believe. And so this is from another book he wrote, Batman, The Killing Joke. And so Batman is like notorious for like, he doesn't kill people, right? He just goes in prison. And so at the beginning of this book, he goes to talk to the Joker, and he says, "I've been thinking a lot lately about you and me. We're gonna kill each other, aren't we? Perhaps you'll kill me, perhaps I'll kill you, perhaps sooner, perhaps later." And so throughout the whole book, the Joker is just trying to like drive Batman crazy. He's trying to change who Batman is. So he attacks Batgirl in her home. He shoots her and paralyzes her, and then he undresses her, and it's implied that he also raped and sexually assaulted her. And then he tries to drive her father crazy by just showing him all the images of this. And in the end, when Batman finally catches the Joker, you can see the Joker tries to tell him a joke, and he starts laughing, and Batman reaches out and grabs him by the neck, and then the laughter fades. So it's implied that in the end, Batman did kill him. And so by doing this, Moore is telling us that we can change what we believe, and so we should take all these negative things he's having us look at, and we should improve society based on that.